All right. Thank you for inviting me here today to present to Milling Cups here. And I want to thank you for the introduction. And also want to make a shout out to Matt Lazard if he's here. He's spent many countless hours working with me over the last 9 months, putting this company together. So I really appreciate that. And also everybody that's here today. I really look forward to hear your views of this when we complete this. So again, my name is Mike Kerbel. I'm the founder CEO of a company called Vortex. So what the heck is Vortex? All right, so Vortex is a eco-friendly company that's working on design and manufacturing with focuses on electric vehicles for off-road and industrial applications. So it's electric, as I say, and that buys us the eco-friendly, good for the environment, reduction of carbon, and also the lower noise. Electric vehicles are much quieter. And this vehicle is also a track vehicle, so it will be less soil compaction and things like that. And so since it is eco-friendly, it will be, this is kind of a vision for tomorrow's type vehicles. So my presentation, I have it titled as software-defined vehicles. I'll get back to that in just a minute, so think about that a little bit. But as a little bit of bio about myself, I have an engineering degree from the University of Minnesota. I've been working in research and advanced development type products for many years already. I worked on the original proof of concept for cellular, worked on P25 project for public safety, and I've spent the last 25 years working in software-defined radio. Notice the connection there. And with that, over the last 10 years, I did some military equipment, test equipment related to the software-defined radio. And also 15 years ago, I did a presentation to the university or to Minnesota State in Mankato. Did a presentation on software-defined radio for that. So from the research that I've done in particularly in software-defined radio, I have 12 patents. So what is software-defined vehicles? How is that different? So software-defined vehicles, there are a couple examples of what a software-defined vehicle applications are. I have a car right now that has adaptive cruise control on it. So I set the cruise control, and if I come up behind another vehicle, it has sensors that keeps me a certain distance behind that other car. It slows down my cruise control to whatever speed that car is going. And if that car starts hitting the brakes, I have automatic braking systems so that my car will stop just like the car ahead of me. So a couple other applications like that. There's a car that I've seen where it can parallel park by itself. Another vehicle can drive into a parking spot by itself. These are all kind of level 3 autonomous vehicle type controls. And so a lot of the electric cars now are really not necessarily focused on the electric car side of things as far as research is concerned, but focus more on the autonomous control and all these other remote control things. And that's basically the focus of what I'm looking for as a company for off-road vehicles and industrial applications, that kind of stuff. So what have I done to date? So I've done a straw man design, which is basically a paper design, if you want to think of it that way. I needed to have a bill of material in detail enough so I knew how much this vehicle would cost. I needed to figure out how much labor it would take to actually manufacture this product, and then what kind of markets. Business plan. I had to write up a business plan, come up with ideas of how we're going to design it, manufacture it, sales and marketing of it. So put together a business plan, and then started doing market analysis of several markets that I'm looking at for this type of a product. There's certain markets that it would be more applicable for, and other markets that it really doesn't fit all that well. So I picked several markets, and then since I had it kind of a paper design, I had to do a patent search. Now, if none of you, or if any of you have done patent searches, you realize that's a lot more work than what it sounds like to begin with. So in the patent search, I did a patent search for track vehicles, electric vehicles, came across over 1,500 patents. So I reviewed those patents, at least from a title point of view and some preliminary things. I reduced or threw out about most of them, except for about 75 of those. Those 75, I wrote up a paragraph description of how I believe that my product does not conflict with those patents. After that, I still had 6 patents to go that were extremely close, or virtually what I was looking at. And so I found 4 of those patents had already expired, so I don't need to worry about those. And then there were 2 patents left that were still active and were along the lines that I was looking at. So I had to go back and redesign a couple things in my straw man design to get around those patents. So that's basically where I'm at today. So one of the questions that I get quite often from people is, why would you do an electric vehicle? They're really not that popular in the US. Well, so a little bit of background information here. Electric vehicles are really pretty popular around the world. And China has over 50% of all the electric vehicles right now. And the US is only at 13.5%. Yes, it's very, very small in the US. So where's it going? Well, in 2018, there were 1.5 million vehicles, electric vehicles. In 2030, they're looking at 125 million vehicles. That's almost 2 orders of magnitude increase in the next 10 years. And then, what's the growth rate in North America? This is at 27.5% annual growth rates. And that's per Allied Market Research. So what that means in a nutshell is that, yes, to date, it hasn't grown very fast, but in the next 5 to 10 years, it really is expected to be almost an explosion in the market for electric vehicles. So here's, what's the issues why the North America, or US at least, hasn't really taken off all that much. Well, originally 10, 20 years ago, the cars that were designed back then had no acceleration whatsoever. They were terrible. Anybody that likes to drive a car needed to drive an electric vehicle. It almost seemed like a wind-up toy from many people's point of view. But 15 years ago, Tesla kind of changed that view when they came out with their Roadster, and that can do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. And I would challenge anybody in the audience to say that their car can go 0 to 60 faster than 1.9 seconds. It's probably not anybody out here. A couple other issues. The cost of electric cars have traditionally been quite a bit more than a gas car. The primarily it's due to the cost of the battery, and the government incentives are helping some, but it's still, the battery is still a huge issue. So what's the issues with the battery? Well, there's the range, and then there's the cost of the battery. And there's a lot of research going on that behind the scenes. And prior to me checking things out, I didn't really know what kind of research is actually, what kind of progress this research is actually done over the last several years. So here's a chart that I found that's really, I think is kind of cool. That was from the economist.com. The chart on the right is the one that is of most interest to me, at least. First, you got the blue graph there that shows that the cost of battery per kilowatt hour back in 2008 was close to $1,000 per kilowatt hour. And actual numbers today per kilowatt hour is about $130 to $150 per kilowatt hour. And both GM and Tesla have gone on record to say that by 2023, that the cost will be well under $100 per kilowatt hour. And many of the experts in the industry believe that once it gets below $100 a kilowatt hour, that the cost of an electric vehicle will be about the same price as a gas vehicle. The other part of this graph that I find very interesting is over the last 10, 12 years, the energy density of these batteries have gone from basically 100 watts per kilowatt hour to 400 kilowatts, or 400 watt hours, which is almost a 4 times increase in the capacity of these batteries. So what does that mean? 4 times the range with the same battery. But when you add that, the cost of that kilowatt hours is basically 1/8 the price of what it was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. You can put in a much bigger battery and not all that much bigger size and have a lot more range. So you're seeing a lot of vehicles now coming out with 300 to 400 mile ranges. And so now you're starting to get competitive, I think, with gas vehicles. But keep in mind that my focus is more on the off-road type applications than on-road. So some of the things that I'm working on going forward here, right now, we're working on funding, applying for grants and angel funding. The grants we applied to to some Minnesota grants, and we're looking for angel funding. Any kind of people that know of anybody that does angel funding, we appreciate that kind of information. We're doing detailed customer feedback now. We've identified several markets that we're going after, and now we're starting to actually call or contact customers in those markets to determine whether or not our ideas make sense to them, if there's some things that we should change or improvements. So we're contacting them. If anybody likes to make lots of phone calls, I'd like to hear from you. We're also looking at doing research for autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's probably, that would be a good research for the university tie-in. Also looking for strategic partners, particularly, I'm looking for somebody right now, a company that can do some either has robotic welding or is capable of doing some pretty high volume welding. As you can imagine, a frame for a vehicle would take a lot of weld joints. So that's probably the most critical strategic partner. Although I will be looking for PC board layout or fabrication, wire harnesses in the future, but that's not number one priority at this point. I'm in the process of looking for a facility, since it's probably going to grow very fast, or at least require a lot of space. Initially, I would just need a garage initially, but it's going to go to tens of thousands of square feet very rapidly. We're in the middle of design and fabrication of a proof of concept unit. I hope to get that fabricated this year, and then working on design and fabrication of some prototypes next year, and then looking for a factory facility to do the final assembly. So in closing, my final comment is that I want to take Vortex to be the next Tesla for the off-road vehicles. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. I'll have you pull your slides down as we go into some Q&A, and then you can put them back up at the end so people can re-grab your contact information. If you have a question or a comment for Mike, feel free to use the raise your hand function, or to put your question in chat. And if you put your question in chat, I'll call on you to ask your question, and so then you can give some clarification to Mike. We're a little short on our typical time, so we'll go with about 5 to 10 minutes of questioning here, and then we'll have to move on. I do see a hand raised. Patrick has a question.
Yeah, Mike, I was wondering if who you're not, if you've networked with other EV entrepreneurs, and if so, what does that network look like? And then I know one of a couple EV entrepreneurs, one in particular, presented at 1 million Cups Mankato in 2019, Wayne Kugel with Zeus Electric, and I shot you his contact information in the chat. But I was just kind of curious if you've networked and chatted with other EV entrepreneurs.
I've been involved briefly with Siemens. I have a friend that I've known for quite a few years that works at that company. And so I've been kind of briefly linking with him. But as far as the off-road vehicle side of it, and Siemens, I don't think is involved with the off-road side of it. They're more the regular EV vehicles. But as far as off-road, there are a couple competitor companies. One particularly is headquartered in Minnesota. You probably all know who that is. Not as Polaris. Can-Am is another big player in that. Those two companies I have not been in contact with. But I have been in contact. One of my strategic partners now is a company that focuses on the tracks and undercarriage side of things. So I have that, I think, under control. I have a fair number of partners on my company that are engineers or similar, and heavily involved with doing some of the research and finding out like state and federal government type specifications and a lot of those kind of issues. So that's one of the areas that we're doing a lot of research in right now.
Awesome, thank you. It looks like the next question here is from David.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you. I was just curious, can you tell us more about the products, or what exactly you're going to build? I mean, You know, I know there's Rivian trucks out there too. They're an electric truck that tows, you know, up to 11,000 pound, you know, trailers or whatever. You know, and then obviously Tesla has cars. Which area are you going to head exactly? Are you going to go into equipment, electrical equipment, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. However, I'm not comfortable at this point disclosing that. If anybody wants to sign an NDA and be involved with some continuing meetings, I'd be more than happy to give details of what we're looking at. But I really don't feel comfortable at this point in a public forum giving lots of details along that line.
Gotcha, I understand.
I apologize.
Yeah, hey, no problem. Thank you.
Yvonne has 2 resources that she shared in chat, so I'll let her elaborate on those a little bit.
I thought I'd do that real quick and just throw them into chat. Inventors Network is a statewide organization of inventors. A lot of folks in that group have multiple patents, can talk a little bit about intellectual property, and have kind of been down that road. And quite a few mechanical and automotive engineers are in that group. So that might be a good resource for you. And then our Department of Automotive Manufacturing Engineering has a team that builds a solar car every year. And I think that they might be a good resource, especially in terms of that research end of things. A guy named Brian Jones, I believe, is the contact there on that car manufacturing.
Awesome. And then Christy shared a resource in chat.
Yes, I was just talking, we kind of talked a little bit about this last week. We're still running our Keep Cato Strong. So that's an opportunity for you to kind of do a 60-second quick interview. It's free, running on our radio stations in rotation 24/7. Basically, we would have Carrie give you a call, ask you some questions, and then we would run that in rotation. So if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to me and I can get that all set up for you.
Okay.
Awesome. Are there any other questions someone would like to quickly ask? And then I can let one more question come in, and then we'll move into the final 1 million cups question. Not seeing any come in. Can I have one of our community organizers ask the final 1 million cups question?
I can, Ryan. What can we as a community do for you?
Well, that's the $1 million question, I guess. As a community, it's really going to take a community to get this company off the road, off the ground and start rolling. And I really need as much support and help and advice that I can get from all of you to get this rolling. So as I mentioned, I have a lot of areas that I am working on at this point. If somebody wants to make phone calls, if somebody wants to give me advice on any of the pieces of this, anybody is heavy into the government side of pulling documents together for products like this, all of those would be extremely helpful. And like I said, I'm also still looking for a small facility in the short term, but I need to rapidly grow into a much larger facility. So I'm looking for facilities. I'm looking for partners. Anybody knows of any companies that would be available for that? So I'm looking for a lot of pieces. So any support is greatly appreciated.